I hate when it does that because it always takes away my chat. I can't see my chat. All right, there we go. All right. So this is the second in the series on emotional intelligence. And just very briefly, we talked about the fact that emotional intelligence is a greater predictor of success in personal relationships as well as professional. And that IQ is about using knowledge and skills for a task, whereas EQ, or emotional quotient, or emotional intelligence, is about self-management and managing your relationships with other people. So, I, of course, want to make sure that we're relating to the word any of the things that we go over. So as you can see, Romans 12:2, this one today is about identifying and understanding your emotions, and that starts with the renewing of your mind. So part of renewing of your mind is to not be reactive or conform to the world, but to actually influence the world, as in you are processing and you are deciding how you're going to react, how you're going to handle and conduct yourself so that you're representing the person or the God that you want to in this world, in your relationships, even when you maybe are just conducting yourself out and about. You don't even, not even necessarily talking to someone, but you don't know who's watching, who's taking in what you're putting out. Okay. So our intro was last month, and I mentioned there that it is an exercising of the fruits of the spirit to have emotional intelligence. It is not something that you kind of like graduate and you've arrived. It's an ongoing journey throughout life to work on things. Some of them are experiences that cause you to have triggers, and some of it is just really learning to better understand yourself and better understand others. Of course, that's easier when you have longer term relationships with people, but as you practice it more, you can pick up on things even from perfect strangers in situations and meetings, in different experiences. When you're out and about, you can start to notice that, okay, I can read that this is not a good situation, or this is off, or they're upset, or they're, whatever the case may be. So the process of renewing of the mind starts with acknowledging what is in the mind, essentially. So what's in your mind, what's in your heart, what your triggers are, what your experiences are that cause you to make the choices you make. And that's not to say that you're making the wrong choices, but you just want to be conscious in those choices and not just reacting or doing things subconsciously. So before we get fully into the presentation, I want to do a lead in on the challenge that we had last session, which was the scripture that Jesus has a conversation with someone, and it seems as if it's two different conversations. The person he's talking to is saying something that has seemingly nothing to do with how he's responding. Does anyone have any idea what scripture I'm talking about? There's no wrong answer. Donna, you had a few. Which you want to bring up?
No, I think I had Proverbs 25. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without will. That's what came to my mind last week when we were talking.
That is very true. That is very true. And there ironically, there's that's said a few different times in the word. So that was interesting to me in my process of, because I study for you guys. I try not to just bring myself. I'm trying to make sure that I'm bringing the spirit into what I'm sharing. And that was a surprise to me, how much those things were recurring in the word, was about self-control and about being mindful and having your emotions in check so that God can prevail. So the scripture that I had in mind was the woman at the well.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And the whole thing is here. I put in green what actually was said. The ones in between are kind of, in between. But basically, he's at the well. He's asking her for a drink of water. And she is asking him why he's asking her for water, because she's not, Hebrew. She's not Jew. And so Jews don't have anything to do with the non-Jews. So, of course, first of all, I just want some water. I don't know why you going there. But I want you to connect it to your own life experience, where you're just trying to do your job. You're just trying to, have a good evening or a good, trip or whatever you're doing. And out of the blue, somebody is messing with you. Like, I didn't ask for this. I'm just minding my own business. I don't understand why you're picking at me. Sometimes you just saying good morning or, good afternoon, and their response is like, okay, where'd that come from? So the conversation switches from, okay, I want some water, to where the conversation transitions. Jesus says, well, where's your husband? And let's see, right here in the middle, Jesus saith unto her, go call thy husband and come hither. So at first he tried. So let's just go through it right quick. Jesus said, give me a drink. I'm gonna 2023 it. Jesus said, give me a drink. And the woman said that, you're Jewish, I'm Samaritan, so why are you asking me for a drink? Jesus said, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that you're talking to, you give me a drink and you wouldn't ask me, and you would have given the living water. So basically, he's like, you don't know who you're talking to, because I don't even care about that. And so then she says, well, where's this living water? Like, what you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well and drank thereof himself? So she's like, basically, who are you to be saying that to me? And he says, whoever drinks of this water shall thirst again, but whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give them shall never thirst. So he's comparing the water in the well to the living water of the Spirit. And she's like, well, give me this water that I thirst not. So we started out where he's asking for some water. And now she's asking for this water that he's mentioning. Oops. And so then he says to her, well, call your husband. And she says, well, I have no husband. So he says, I know you don't have a husband, and you've had 5, and even the one you're with now isn't your husband. So he basically letting her know that he know all her business. And then she's like, oh, okay. I know you don't know me. You haven't been here before. So you must be a prophet, because you know stuff you shouldn't know about. And so then he basically tells her, he gives her a prophecy, of what is to come. And so she ends up leaving. And for those that don't know the background of this woman, She actually ends up being a major voice for the spreading of the word. She goes to the city and tells everyone in the city about Jesus. She converts her family, her brothers, her sisters, her sons. She is thought to be one of the first evangelists for Christ from this one conversation. And she actually left home to travel. That's how committed she was to spreading the gospel. And for those who are, Catholics, she became who's known as Saint Fotini, and her sisters become saints. So a very major fixture in the word and in scripture, but literally from this one conversation that seemed to have nothing to do with anything. So I chose this one, and as I said, there's other stories, but I chose this one because when we're representing Christ, we don't know who we're talking to, just like they don't know who they're talking to. And so we have to be obedient to whatever God is telling us that we're supposed to be saying. But the best way to do that is for us to not get in the way. And sometimes people do come to us the wrong way. As I was mentioning the last session, a lot of people are walking around with hurt. And so they may try to poke your hurt to get you to be outside of your character or outside of your mission or your walk or whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. And so our control or our self-control, our reining in of our emotions, or our choosing how we react allows us to show up as our best selves, but also that we don't miss opportunities like this. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, that was Jesus. I mean, but if you can think of a time where, whether it was someone you knew or didn't, that you did not react in such a way that was harmful or destructive, but in love. And I hope that you have been blessed to have the experience of maybe even years later, you don't see them, you don't interact with them, and out of the blue, they say how much something that you don't even remember saying or doing touched them. That's God using you as a vessel. But we can't allow ourselves to get in the way of that. And so there's, God is not necessarily going to tell you what the impact is going to be, but we don't know. When you go to I'll give you an analogy. When you go to the grocery store, there's all kinds of produce in the produce section, right? And if you look at them, some of them come from Brazil, Chile, the Philippines, come from all over the place. Do you think that person in Puerto Rico imagined that when they planted that seed, that it would end up producing fruit that would feed the world? They're just planting that seed. And that's how you have to look at when you're being a vessel for God. You don't necessarily know what fruit is going to be born from that. How many trees are in that seed? How much fruit is in that seed? But if it's buried in good ground, if it's good seed, then it's going to bear good fruit. So be a good vessel. All right. I wanted to share that, and as I said, I want to try to make sure that I tie back what we're talking about to the word. So the emotions that we feel are obviously not tangible, but they become tangible by virtue of the way that we process them in our body. And that's by virtue of the limbic system. Excuse me, the limbic system is like the heart of the brain, or the core, the middle of the brain, and it ties different parts of our brains together. Primarily our higher brain, which is our higher functions, which is the reasoning, which is what we're trying to develop in our conversations. And then the lower brain is more just your automatic functions, like your heart beating, your breathing, all of these different things. And so what do those things have to do with each other? Your body functioning and your higher functioning. Why is that? Well, your higher functioning and your choices, everything in your body is controlled by your brain deciding how to respond to things. And so it does affect your breathing. It does affect your heart rate. It does affect you start sweating. All of these different things come from your brain saying that we're in trouble, things are great, whatever it is, it's deciding is going on. That is all processing in your brain and sending out signals to tell your body what it should and should not do in any particular situation. The key is to make it most likely that your higher functioning intellect is the one that's making the decisions. But in extreme situations, your body will just react to protect itself. And if you think of a very simple thing, you don't tell yourself, I need to blink when something's coming at your eye. You just blink because your body is programmed to protect your eye. Same thing as when you flinch, when something's coming at you, all of those things are reactive, but it is a process that's happening in your limbic system that's telling your body, hey, there's trouble. We need to do something to protect ourselves. Sometimes it can be destructive, though, if we have had experiences that have trained us to think that there's danger when there isn't, or we have not processed what has happened in our past where we had to deal with things as children. Now we're adults and we don't have to accept certain circumstances or certain situations. We can make different choices, but sometimes if we don't think it through, we still react and behave as if we don't have a choice. So I'm going to play this video, and I apologize, Joseph, but I think that you may have to cut it out because it does have some music in the background. But if you are watching this playback and we do have to cut it out, it is on YouTube as on the Centis channel. Look for Emotions and the Brain.
Most of us think of love, hate, happiness, or fear, those strong feelings we experience throughout life. Our emotions are the driving force behind many of our behaviors, helpful and unhelpful. Just where do our emotions come from? Our brain is wired to look for threats or rewards. If one is detected, the feeling region of the brain alerts us through the release of chemical messages. Emotions are the effect of these chemical messages traveling from our brain through the body. When our brain detects a potential threat, our brain releases the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol, which prepare us for a fight or flight response. When we detect or experience something rewarding, such as someone doing something nice for you, our brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, or serotonin. These are the chemicals that make us feel good and motivate us to continue on the task or behavior. In these instances, the feeling region of the brain kicks in before the thinking part. Sometimes the reactions of the feeling brain are so strong that it dominates our behaviors and we're unable to think rationally in the moment. Our emotions hijack our brain. While many of our emotional responses happen subconsciously, our thinking can influence our emotions, and sometimes this can be unhelpful. Just thinking about something threatening can trigger an emotional response. This is where we can manage our emotions with conscious thinking. Our emotions play a powerful role in the way we experience the world. Understanding and regulating our emotions through our thoughts and behaviors can help us take greater control of our brain and achieve our goals.
All right. Thank you for watching that right quick. So I wanted to make sure that we're understanding that it's not just feelings, but it actually lives and has a tangible impact on you physically, not just mentally. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that now. So the first thing about becoming aware of your emotions is to acknowledge them. It's important to acknowledge them so that you can address them. It's like, knowing is half the battle type of thing, or the first step in changing it is to acknowledge it. So it's not a matter of dwelling on things. So what we teach, whether it's being wittingly or unwittingly, what we teach to each other, to children, to our loved ones, to our friends, is to move on. It's done now, it's over, move on. And yes, you do, time that marches on, things continue to happen, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't acknowledge the effect that things have on you, how you're feeling about them, and to process that. You can still move on, but you still should also process it so that it doesn't continue to linger. The amazing thing about the way that we're made as beings is that we are innately problem solvers. It doesn't matter how smart you think you are or how much you like problem solving. It's just the way that our brains are made to try to figure things out. So when you have things that occur that you don't address, at least to acknowledge and decide what you're going to do with that, your brain doesn't let it go. It's pushed maybe to your subconscious, but it's still trying to process it and work it out, even if you're not helping it do that. So you can allow it to be left to its own devices, or you can choose to process it and work through it and let it go and move on in a healthy way. So that's how you end up where we've talked about in the past, you end up in like the same relationship, even though it's a different person, it's a different age, they may be a different ethnicity, culture, whatever, but somehow their personality is the same as the last person, as the last person, because that is your subconscious way of trying to go back and fix what was broken, what went wrong, what you felt like shouldn't have been the way that you thought it was going to go. So the way to break that is to actually acknowledge your own feelings and process them. And process basically just means, okay, how did I feel? Why did I feel this way? What's my part in it? What do I need to acknowledge with regards to that other person? The different things that you need to go through to be able to be at peace with what has occurred. Because as we said last session, you can't change what has happened. You can't change the past, but you can actually look at what has occurred, how it's affected you. Is that what you want to sit in? Do you want to now be not trusting of anyone? Is that what you want to do? Because if that's where you are, you have to make a conscious decision to change that by processing things and determining what your basis of fear or anxiety or repression is, and then let that go and find a way to, okay, what do I need to feel like I can trust a person? What do I feel like is missing that I need to change in order to be more comfortable, to feel more at ease in my dealings with people, in my relationships, etc. Another way to look at it is, and this sounds a little strange, so I'm going to ask that you just go with it for a minute. When we don't acknowledge our feelings, it allows other people to not acknowledge them as well. So if you're dismissing your own feelings, then that doesn't force, if it is a situation where you're dealing with another person, it doesn't force them to be careful of your feelings, to acknowledge that your feelings matter, because you're communicating by not acknowledging them, by not confronting them, that they don't matter. And so therefore, if that person is, pushing for theirs to matter, then you're essentially saying that there's no room for you in the relationship because it's all about them. It's all about their feelings. And you're just like, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. Well, you may be okay, and you may be okay eventually, but in that moment, if they're offending you, if they're hurting you, if they're disrespecting you, whatever it is that they're doing, there needs to be an acknowledgement of that, to say, okay, I didn't realize, hopefully they say, I didn't realize that that's how you felt, and I will make an adjustment. But if they don't, then that's something that you have to take into consideration of, okay, I've given you an opportunity to treat me as an equal in this relationship and care about my feelings as much as you want me to care about yours, and you've chosen not to do that. Sometimes we feel like people are selfish or inconsiderate, and sometimes they are, but sometimes it's a matter of us not having taught them how to treat us, because we've been too accommodating or too accepting of them and their personality or their preferences without properly communicating our own. So that's something that you want to just kind of think about, because it is a trust thing. When we don't do that, when we kind of hold all of those things in and we say we're fine, it's partly because you don't want to be vulnerable for that person to say, I don't care about your feelings. It doesn't matter to me that you're offended, upset, what have you. But we can't have healthy, full relationships with people until we bring that element of ourselves into it. And we're not just, wallpaper. We're actually a whole person, just like them in the situation. Okay. So what happens with what we were just looking at with those emotions and the different things that are happening in our body, those things are energy. And repressing those feelings is very unhealthy. It's unhealthy emotionally, but it's also unhealthy physically. So you have to let those feelings out. What I want to say first is the unhealthy part emotionally, besides what I just mentioned about how it impacts your relationships, is that it does cause you to build this wall where you're not fully present in your relationships with people, because you have this fortress of my emotions are not going to get out type of a thing. And it seems to a lot of people like you're just very controlled, but there's no such thing. And so either you're going to explode at some point, or you're going to be fully psychosomatic where it becomes a physical ailment. Excuse me. So the signs of the emotions are evident if you're kind of paying attention to your body. Sometimes it's not as extreme, depends on what's going on, but you want to make sure that you're paying attention to like what's happening in your body, because sometimes that happens before we realize that the feeling is happening. Like we're reacting before we even connect to like what's going on. And it's usually when it's something that takes us by surprise. Like when somebody says something that's just like, wait, what? And we feel it before we process it. So sometimes it's like, okay, what am I feeling like? I'm bothered, but I don't really know what it is. So I'll give you an example. We sometimes will do something very nice for someone, and they don't necessarily receive it that way. And they might snap, or they might, say something that is clear that they're very upset about it. And so of course you're like, hey, it's, and they respond in a way that's like you ready to fight, and you're saying, well, okay. And so you start having feelings because you feel the energy from them, but you also have your reaction of, okay, I was expecting this to be a different conversation. I thought I was doing a good thing. And so it may take, like, the conversation might be over. You might have gone on somewhere else before you can really figure out, like, okay, what am I feeling? Why was that so disturbing to me? What happened? And so a way to kind of process that is to look at the signs that are kind of happening within you. And so I put the extreme ones up here. Anger and fear have adrenaline in common. They and I want you guys to give yourself some grace on this. So hatred is up there, and people have a very strong reaction to hatred. But hatred is not a thing where, like, you feel it and you sit in it and you carry it around. Sometimes it's a reaction, and then once you realize it, then you is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I got a message that somebody was having problems, so I just want to make sure it's not me. So you have a reaction, and it's not it's something that you feel in the moment, but then it passes. So it's like, oh, like you have a flash of anger or something like that. So even if you feel hatred for a split second, it's not like, oh, I hate them. And hate. Sometimes it's just that we hate the situation, or we hate the way that the person reacted. We hate something about it, not that we hate, like I'm a hateful person type of a thing. So don't feel like that's an issue because you feel those types of things in that moment. So your breathing, like I said earlier, your breathing changes, your heart rate. You may start to sweat. You may feel like tension in your shoulders, different things that your body's reacting to this situation and telling you that the mood has shifted, essentially. With that sadness and shame, there's a like a sinking feeling. There's feeling like you don't want to be around people, you want to isolate from people. You feel some despair, disappointment, different things that kind of come up that are really all inside you. You could be at the amusement park, you could be anywhere. It has nothing to do with what's going on outside. It's all within you. And recognizing that your fists are clenched, or your shoulders are, tense, or that you got a tension headache, or that your brow is furrowed, all of these different things. We all have different indicators. These are the things that are pretty common in everyone's reaction based on what your limbic system or your body and your brain normally do in reaction to these feelings. And so, and your thoughts go to harm, violence, vengeance, regrets, insecurity. These are the things that come out of that. The important thing about it is to recognize that this is how you're feeling. This is not the reality of the world. This is how you're feeling in that moment. This is what you're seeing in that moment. So then the next thing, of course, is, okay, I'm feeling this. What am I going to do about it? Okay. So when we're not thinking, and for anybody who's been to anger management class, hopefully not court mandated, the biggest connection that's often made is the reality that oh, because I feel this doesn't mean that I have to do that. You can choose how to react to those emotions. So some of us choose sometimes not to react, as I said, to repress those emotions. And when we do that, we can end up with health-related issues like stress-related illnesses, chronic anxiety, and of course that affects our sleeping, our mental well-being, stress headaches, sometimes even, stomach aches or stress disorders that will cause you to have cancer. There's different things that we suffer from if we swallow our anger or swallow our negative emotions. But of course, as adults, we know that we can't just do what we did when we were 2 and just get on the ground and start kicking and screaming. That's not an option, unfortunately. So what do you do with those emotions that you have? Because yeah, you need to be constructive about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to alleviate how you're feeling, right? So I put the scripture on here from 2 Corinthians 10:5, really to bring to bear the fact that all of these things are in our head. Sometimes it's triggered by something. Sometimes it's literally a chronic anxiety or depressive state. But the point is that you have control to rein that in. And so we'll talk about ways to do that. But one thing you want to do when you're feeling things is to lean into it. And so that may sound counterintuitive, like, why would I lean into it? Why would I do that? Like, I don't want to curse somebody out at work. I don't want to get fired or what have you. So believe it or not, when you lean into the emotion in a constructive way, and so I put some constructive ways up there that you could actually, depending on your job, you could do all of these at work. Depending on your job, you could go in the bathroom and dance, or if you got an office. But all of these things give you the ability to pull whatever you're feeling out of you and out into the world in a safe way. So you may what I do, I actually have a playlist for everything. I got a playlist for when I'm mad. I have a playlist for when I'm sad and I need to, get happy. I got a playlist for, praise and worship and everything. And it allows me to fully feel what I'm feeling in that moment through singing the song or whatever. And then I've got it out, and I might sing it, and I cannot sing. So, but as at the top of my lungs, and you might see me on the interstate on my way into the office, like I got a meeting and I already know. So let me go ahead and get this out now. So when I get in the meeting, because now it's not sitting in you. And you might think, well, it's not that person that I'm saying or doing or what have you. You don't have to do that. You can be unrestrained and open and as, vocal, as loud, yelling, whatever it is that you need to do in your private space, so that when you're interacting with that person or in that situation that's bothering you, you have now released those overwhelming emotions to be able to speak calmly and comfortably to communicate what it is that you really want to say, what it is that you really want to do, because ultimately we want to be effectively communicating in the situation and not controlled by our emotions. And therefore, now we've created a bigger problem or we've damaged a relationship, what have you. So you can use music, you can write, writing down how you feel and what your thoughts are another way to do it. Sometimes poetry, reading or writing it. Of course, therapy is a great tool. And for those who are gifted, drawing, painting, or coloring, I mean, I don't think you have to draw a good picture for it to work, but sometimes people get frustrated when it's not something that they can just kind of do. And, we don't want to create more frustration. Excuse me. And then dancing, again, because it's a physical reflection of what's happening inside, it relaxes you, it gets it out so that it's not just swimming around inside you, waiting to explode. Does anybody have any other methods that they have used or that they use?
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, it's working out. That's how I get to a chance to think. Walking, anything like nature related, like nature just does something to me in general, like hiking and looking at like beautiful scenery or landscape that kind of clears your mind and de-stresses and helps you process thoughts better, for me at least.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, so since you mentioned it, so this will tell you guys a little bit about me. So Alex Huberman is a neuroscientist and professor in California, and that's my crush. Okay, I love Alex Huberman, and he has a podcast that is amazing. And so one of the things that he talks about is how our brains. He talks about how the whole thing works together. So what I learned, well, one of the things that I learned is that walking actually is a de-stressor naturally. The process of our eyes picking up things in the peripheral causes us to relax. And so it's different things that you don't think actually matter, but when you're doing them, if like sometimes people, it's like cleaning. Some people for cleaning it's relaxing. Some people for cooking it's relaxing. And those are good things for after you've metaphorically murdered the thing that's driving you crazy. You want to calm back down, but you do have to get something out. So like what you were saying, Natalie, about the working out. When before COVID, I used to go to the gym every day after work. It was great because I built up all day. And then in the in the evening, I would let it all out in the gym. So that is a good constructive way of expressing and getting those emotions out. But also just, being okay with feeling what you're feeling, not judging that your feelings are wrong or negative, or you're being negative, or you're being, you're dwelling or whatever. Allowing yourself the grace to feel those things and to get them out, and then having a way to kind of, well, really a lot of the time, just getting it out, you calm down on your own. But if you do have a problem getting back to center, then you can do different things, as what Natalie and some people are saying in the chat, to kind of bring things back down to, to being calm. So we want to, guard our hearts and make sure that we're being mindful of what's coming in, what's going out. But when you are kind of like, all right, I've got that out, I feel better, I was frustrated and now I, did some CrossFit for 2 hours or whatever you did that made you feel better. You can then say, all right, now I need to shift. Well, it would be even better if you didn't get to that point, but sometimes things just happen and you can't help it, especially if it's an ongoing situation or problem. But what you can do so that you are more even keel all the time is to practice looking inward and that's basically just like self-reflection, doing breathing. And it doesn't have to be a whole meditation thing. You can if you want to, but sometimes it's just closing your eyes and focusing on yourself, like shutting everything else out, because there's so much stimuli in our environment, your phone, email, TV, other people, whatever, but just kind of focusing inward. And the start of that is usually just to focus on your breathing. And sometimes you realize that, oh, wow, I didn't realize that my breathing was, so heavy or so shallow or whatever. And that's an indication of you feeling something that you didn't even realize, sometimes because it becomes a common thing. So we don't realize that we're experiencing something because we just have become accustomed to it. Your feelings aren't right or wrong. They're your feelings. So there's nothing, like, again, I said, no judgment on it. That's not the point of reflecting on it, is to judge it, but to just really acknowledge it and know this is what's going on. Identify each emotion. And sometimes we can be surprised at what it is that we're feeling. Like, okay, I don't know why this is coming up right now. And so you can then, deal with that and recognize it. Sometimes it tells us things about ourselves or our relationships with other people that we maybe didn't realize. So what do I mean by that? Sometimes we look back and we realize that we saw the signs of something with a person, but we talked ourselves out of it. We rationalized that it wasn't what we thought it was. But our feelings know better. And so we don't have to act on our feelings, but we can use it as tools to make decisions about what's best for ourselves and how we relate or deal with other people. So if you're feeling like, well, they're saying all the right things, but it's just something, I don't know, it don't feel right. Don't ignore that. There's a reason why you're feeling that way. Now, if you feel that way about everybody, that's different. But it's usually not the case. Usually there's those situations. And if you think back to when you felt that way before, you say, oh, you know what? I felt like that before. And I, said, well, why am I feeling that way? They're fine. They're great. And then it turned out to be an issue later that had you just paid attention to your feelings, even though it seemed baseless, then you would have avoided some things. So the other thing is to pray daily. Some people look at it as meditation, but essentially you're looking at, you want to focus on you and how you're feeling. It's good to do it first thing in the morning, kind of set yourself for the day. Figure out how you're feeling. And that's probably going to be different on a weekday than it is on the weekend if you are a Monday through Friday person. Give yourself the room to feel how you're feeling, or self-compassion, as in don't judge your feelings. Don't feel like there's something wrong with you because you feel whatever you feel. Another thing, going back to the science, being kind, even to yourself, releases oxytocin and other chemicals that are what are called rewards in our bodies. They make us feel better about ourselves. Our attitude is better. We're therefore, of course, better towards others. So if you're feeling down one day, I, take in what I'm feeling, try to understand why I'm feeling that way. But like I said, I got my playlist. So like, all right, let me go ahead and put my armor on. I got to get out there and do it. But don't feel as though there's like, I shouldn't be sad or I shouldn't be angry because XYZ. That's not a useful practice. And it causes you to start repressing your emotions. And then with the prayer, it's a good practice, of course, to pray in general, but sometimes we feel that there are just things that we can't tell anyone. And so praying gives us a sense that we aren't alone, or I should say, it reminds us that we're not alone. And then we are receiving, what God is sharing with us to say, okay, this is why I'm feeling this way. This is what I'm needing to do today. This is what I need to be mindful of to be prepared for the day. So you want to just take that time, and any time is the right time. Sometimes the ride into work, for those who still go into the office, is the only time you have like quiet time or whatever. But if you are in a moment or in a situation, it's an opportunity to say, all right, let me rein things back in. God, like, okay, I don't know what's going on. What I need to do? What are you trying to tell me? Sometimes we wake up and it's something that some crazy dream, and like, what was that about? Like, what you trying to say? So you just want to take time for yourself, check in with yourself, pay attention to yourself. And so this is the last slide. Here's some homework again that you can kind of start to develop some habits to be helpful for yourself. And so the first one is to practice pausing. So practice pausing essentially is that you're not immediately feeling the need to say or do something in response to, whatever is said or done. You can take a beat and you get especially, email, somebody says something, just because they are expecting doesn't mean that you have to do what they're expecting. As in, if they're like, okay, I've said everything, now it's your turn to talk. You don't have to, you're not on their schedule where you got to immediately talk. You can say, all right, I need a minute to process this. Whatever you want to say, you don't have to do what is expected. If it's an email, you might need to write it a few times before you send it. You might need to send it to a friend and say, can you read this for me? Because I know what I want to say. If it's a situation that's ongoing and you've already done, whatever, that doesn't mean you have to continue down that road. You can say, all right, what I've done is not working. Let me figure out what is really the issue, or what is going to be the best way of coming to the quickest resolution. So you can take that time to really think it through and decide what's the best way to react based on all the information you have, or to act. If it's something that maybe nobody knows and you're like, all right, I got to make this decision, and I know it's going to rock some boats, but boats will be rocked. So sleep 8 hours every night. Sleep is incredibly underrated as an important factor in our mental and physical well-being. Lack of sleep causes reactions to be ever more irrational. And the reason is because our rational brain, or our frontal cortex, the part that, processes everything and says, okay, is this the right thing to do? Don't do that because that's going to cause this. That part of your brain doesn't even talk to your reactive part of your brain if you have a sleep deficiency. You're just in like survival mode when you're sleep deprived. You're just trying to get through the day. So if you have ever tried to do something discipline-wise, like, oh, I'm on a diet, I'm not going to eat this, or I'm not going to do this thing that I know is not good for me, you will find that you are less able to hold on to that choice if you are sleep deprived, because your body is going to do what it wants to do. It's going to feed its need, or its perceived need. And so so your rational mind knows that a decision was made, but it can't get to the physicality to say, don't do that. It's just over there, like the phone connection's been dropped. It can't get through. So you want to get as much sleep, you want to get your 8 hours of sleep. And if you're a nerd like me, you can check out the sleeping impact. It's amazing how much sleep impacts our health and what happens when we don't get enough sleep. But when it comes to navigating our emotions and our choices and our reactions is very important. And then some of us just know, some of y'all out there know that if you don't get enough sleep, nobody needs to talk to you that day. You just are not pleasant. You just don't get along with anybody. So try to do that. If you're not able to get the sleep, for some reason you're having problems sleeping, it's probably because there's something going on that you need to address. And sometimes you can, and sometimes it's a situation that's just like frustrating and you can't do anything about it. But that means that you have to find other ways, like the things we were already talking about, of getting that out. So it's not just swimming around in your psyche unresolved. And that is part. So a couple of things. One, the most common element of mental illness is lack of sleep. Mental illness affects your sleeping. And so that could be, self-induced, or it could be that there's a chemical imbalance or whatever, but lack of sleep is an element in all mental illness. To what degree varies, but it does affect that. One of the things that ties it together is that in your sleep, as I said, your brain tries to resolve things. In your sleep, your brain reenacts things that happen that's bothering you in your subconscious, and it tries to solve it. And so it's a way to not have you redo it in the real world, but it still can kind of like process it internally. When you don't sleep, it can't do that. And why 8 hours? It takes 8 hours to go through the whole series of activities that happen during your sleep, all the different things that happens in your brain and in your body. It takes 8 hours for it to go through that full cycle. So I gave you guys, I mentioned triggers a few times. You want to make sure that you know what yours are. Everybody's are different. But essentially a trigger is where you're reacting in a way that is very knee-jerk, and seems to be out of proportion with what you would expect from yourself, or what you think is like I don't want to say normal, but what your expectations are. So you sometimes are like way down the road of reaction before you kind of look back and you're like, was it that serious? Or like, what happened? Why am I so upset? Why am I so angry? Why am I so, whatever you're feeling? But it just kind of takes us to a whole, like it flips the switch on us. And it takes a minute to realize that our switch was flipped. But once you do, then you want to try to backtrack to what it is that you think caused that. And hopefully over time, you can figure out what that ties back to, because triggers are, I don't want to say 100% of the time, because I'm not, as despite what Joseph said, I don't have all those degrees, but it's often tied back to something that happened in our past that is unresolved, either to us or around us, that we've created a protection for ourselves, that we're reacting in a flight or flight type of way to that thing. So you might feel like you're ready to fight someone because they said something that everybody else is like, what's the big deal? And you're, very upset about it, or frustrated, angry, sad, etc. And then there's actually some apps out there that you can use to track your emotions. So if you are really like, you need something that's like, look, this is too many different things, I don't know, you can actually install an app and it will help you to start to identify your emotions, so that you can kind of keep up with what's going on. And then there are some courses, some free resources on Therapy in a Nutshell website. They also have a YouTube channel, but there's some free resources that you can do some manual tracking, if you would like to do that. But again, the whole point of all of this is that if you're not aware of it, then you are not going to be able to address it, allow it to have its place, and then to dismiss it in a constructive and healthy way. And therefore, when you're in relationships with people, especially, again, all relationships it affects, but our romantic ones are the ones where we're most often at our most vulnerable and more likely to do harm to someone we really care about, because we are not able to put on our public face when we're with this person that's in our private space. So you want to be able to have the right attitude relationship, especially if you can look back and honestly say, I could have handled that better. Well, how are you going to handle it better if you're still doing things the same way? So renew your mind. Anyone have anything they would like to share? D? Okay, I thought I heard you. Look like Stephanie's looking for the mute button.
Tashawn?
Yes, Kate.
Sure, yeah. I can just say that so much of what you said, I've experienced and also use a lot of the strategies. I would say one that actually I would encourage anyone to do is actually that sleep, getting that sufficient sleep, because as you mentioned, like I'm at the point now where anytime my sleep is off, I sit and I reflect on what's happening currently in my life, and you would be surprised to know the little things that you can address, take care of it, and be able to get the amount of sleep that you really need. I believe that people have different amount of sleep hours that they need. Some is not necessarily 8. For me, it's 7. My thing is 7. If I get 7, wonderful. Sometimes if you get too much sleep, it actually impacts you negatively as well. I don't think people realize that. And that means that just laying in the bed and thinking that if you sleep for 12, 14 hours every day, that that's going to give you mental health. No, it doesn't. So I think the balance is important. And then also for me, of course, everything as it relates to, and this came with a lot of practice and a lot of horrible experiences, that I had to learn that when you're actually passionate about something is when you tend to respond in a way or immediately instead of thinking. So for me, I recognize what are the things that I'm really passionate about, and when something actually happens, if like for me, I'm very passionate about children and what happens to children, and especially children of color, okay, or marginalized children, because I'm an educator. And so then I have to really, on my job, find ways of like really managing how is it that I'm going to be able to advocate in a way where I'm actually being emotionally constant and still being effective at the same time. And I find like that practice is also, I find I carry over in my personal life. And that's why I brought that up, because I feel the more I practice that on my job, the more like on the personal side, I'm able to manage as well. And then one more thing I would say is that one of the ways that I do that is to ask questions and get people to start thinking about their actions as opposed to me addressing their actions. So when I ask questions, I'm pushing them to actually think. So I just wanted to share my experiences, and I definitely encourage others to take all those strategies that you mentioned.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, you're right. When you're passionate about things, that's when it becomes most challenging, because sometimes we can feel like, how can you not see how important this is? And that's the challenge, is we're sometimes feeling like we're explaining something that's like, duh, this is so obviously important. But what I have done in my experience, besides what you mentioned, Kate, because I do use that too, of asking questions, is I try to focus on that the common denominator, which is how does it benefit me? Because that's where people generally function from, is how does it benefit me? Why should I care? And it may pull them into other aspects of it, but that's what gets their attention initially, is that's how they relate to it, to even start to think about the other aspects of it. And so I may or may not agree with that being the reason why they should care. But if I know that that is a truth about it, and it is something that helps them connect to it, to say, okay, yeah, I see the value in it now that you've pointed that out, then I'll point it out. Because it's not why it's important to me, but it may be why it's important to them. And if it's going to get their buy-in to now be committed to improving the situation or supporting the solution or working towards a solution, then mission accomplished. But I mean, of course you want to be honest, but there are many different sides of different situations and circumstances where, when you're practicing some of the things we haven't gotten to yet, but when you practice some of the things like social management, you're able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and now start to say, okay, if I was this person, what would I need to hear to feel like this is as important to them, to me, as it is to them? And that helps to kind of get over that obstacle of being on, opposing sides perhaps, or being in an adversarial posture in a conversation versus now let's figure out how we can work together on the issue, not being combative towards each other. Anyone else?
Hey, Tashawn.
Hey.
Thank you. That was a powerful presentation. Like every aspect of it, you can break it down and you can get maybe four sessions out of each one of those sections, from the limbic system with the fight or flight response. And I try to relate everything back to like relationships. When you start talking about the fight or flight response, I was remembering incidents where I was out on a date and she would do something that triggered a reaction from a past relationship. And, I have to decide, okay, well, is this like a red flag, or it's just my own stinking thinking that this person is the same as the ex, and I have to deal with it in that moment and kind of talk myself through it that, no, this is a different person. It's not the same. This is just my emotions, but, Lori will contest. I can go on with this presentation because it's the bomb. Me and Lori have had similar training with, being able to identify our emotions, whether I'm happy, sad, mad, afraid, embarrassed, or just indifferent and not even knowing what I feel. So just by identifying what I'm feeling in the moment, then I can now begin to understand, well, where is that feeling coming from? So, I mean, you did a excellent job. I guess I need to pay attention more to your presentations.
Thank you.
But I do want to thank you for a good, you did an excellent job. And this one definitely through the ballpark. It gives us a lot to think about, especially as I look at everything from a relationship standpoint, being that this is Christian Singles Connect, so when I'm constantly having to look at where stuff is coming from in my life. Like recently, I learned that I got trust issues. Didn't know I had trust issues until some situations came up that was just kind of weird for me. But when I really looked at it, and it was dealing with a woman, I was like, okay, I've got trust issues that I need to deal with. But, just a reminder to everybody, like I can work on myself by myself, but things don't really come up until you get around other people. Once you start dealing with other people, that's before that work you did on yourself actually paid off.
Yeah.
Because it's going to come to the surface when you're in the moment, but yeah, you did a really good job. Thank you for that. That's all I got for now.
Thank you, Sean. Sean's messing with me because he didn't realize that I wrote a book. And I'm like, I mentioned it in a few sessions. It's on my profile.
Yeah, that's why I'm paying attention more now. You're like, you're like a leader in the field. So
oh, that's an extreme statement, but thank you.
I gotta pay for your webinar.
Yeah, so just adding to what you were saying, Sean, that fellowship thing, that's, and I mean, this is entirely my opinion. This is just what I think, but that's why, that we have church and God wants us to fellowship and everything, is because it's easy to do right, be right, all on our own. It does not cause us to hone our skills. It doesn't cause us to do that development when we are just kind of, left to our own devices. But that requirement that we love one another, that is the challenge and the task and it requires us to be around each other, interact with each other, spend time with each other. And that's when we find out, you know, how strong or weak our faith, our love, our patience, all these different things are, is during that time. Okay, Donna. So Calvin,
Yes.
you did you have something to share? And then we'll go to LA and D.
Yeah, bouncing around in my seat, itching to say something because I have an opinion too.
Okay.
It's slightly different because it's more directed at men.
Okay.
And what I have been, being an ex-cop,
Mm-hmm.
I end up mostly talking to men and personally feeling that at one time I had a disdain for an emotional, I would call that girly, okay? And my reason for that is I put so many guys in jail because they reacted out of emotion, just like you've been teaching here. And I would tell guys, dude, forget your emotion, suck it up, man up. We all heard that saying, because it leads to a relationship. I'm pretty sure every woman that's on here now, if they were in a situation and had looked to a man, you wouldn't want him all emotional. Dude, like to see him cool, calm, collected. I got it, hon. Well, whenever that situation would come up, and I always felt like you can't think when you're emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And because women seem like they're more emotional than men, I would think they would look to their man when they're in that zone where you like, calm down, baby. I got this. I got it. Calm down. Sure. Yeah. I see that half smile on your face. Go ahead. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Don't hold it back. But believe it or not, men, we do check each other. Whether they take that advice or not, like, dude, calm your down. Okay. Calm your behind down and miss me with that emotion. You're acting like excuse the expression, you're acting like a woman. You're acting like a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we do. We shame men into emotion. I said this to a young lady once, and she feels as though that saying that we were taught to suck it up, keep that emotion, you fall, don't cry, all that stuff. But and I'm like, that's why you have men now that can't make a decision, because you got them all caught up in their emotion. Go ahead, Joseph. I saw you grab your head, man. Go ahead, help a brother out. Go ahead.
I'm a little conflicted because when you first said you're acting like a girl, I tell my son, stop girling all the time, okay? But in another case, I don't kind of agree. It's a balance, and it's a hard balance that a lot of people have not been taught, especially men and sometimes women, in regards to their expectations of a man. Because we're people, we have emotions too, and although we suppress them, there has to be a safe time for that emotion to come out in front of a woman, and she has to be able to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, I agree in regards to
that one now.
You need to be like, I get like when things get bad, I get logical and linear. You know what I mean? I've been blessed where if it's a bad situation, an emergency, I'm not thinking about how I feel. I'm thinking about how to solve this issue, and I'll deal with my emotions later. You know what I mean?
You're making
My children, And I got 2 boys. Oh my God, I got 2 boys. And my oldest son is just like me. He's really soft-hearted, but he just turned 15, and I'm noticing he's becoming callous. And I understand with him that that's his outside protection. And I'm like, dude, I know you. I know you care. I know you love XYZ. And he'll be like, that stink teenager. You know? So it's a delicate balance. And as a man, you have to be strong enough to know when to let those emotions flow.
I agree that there is a balance to it. There is a balance. But I was married before, once upon a time. And no, I wouldn't hide that emotion. Okay. But just like most men, we let that emotion out in sports events. So and just guys being emotional, maybe I was wrong in that. I'm not sure. But I agree, there's a balance. But I would like to hear from women about it. I mean, they look at us and say certain things, and I've heard them say some things a little too soft for me. Okay, looks like not a take charge kind of guy, and I think all of that kind of ties in.
Yeah. Well, I was smiling, Calvin, when you were talking, because my late husband and I had a whole conversation about this, and what I told him was, everyone has feelings, everyone has emotions. And if you're not expressing them, you're suppressing them, and you're going to explode on me later. So I would rather you just come out with it, because I can deal with that better than the explosion.
Well, it's a balance. That's why I say, nah, you got to recognize what's happening. Okay, so it doesn't explode. And that's why I say most of us take out our emotions at sports events. Yeah, you see all that, and you're yelling at the TV and all that. But just don't unload on the other person. Got to recognize it. And once you get in, you get emotional. To me, it can go anywhere, even violent. We all know that. So somebody got to be in control, and I'd rather it be the man.
Well, it should be a give and take. I mean, there's going to be times where the man is not going to, he's going to be at a weak point. And I mean, whatever man is on here or listens to this recording, you don't ever need to be with someone that you don't feel safe enough to be vulnerable. That's the wrong relationship, whoever that is. So if you're feeling like you need to cry or scream or whatever's going on, that person should be your safe place to feel whatever it is that you feel. Even if it's like, you know what, I just need you to rub my head, hold me, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a big production. But the point is that you should feel like whatever it is okay. Mm-hmm. And if you don't feel that, then you're in the wrong relationship.
I think that's where the trust comes from. Okay. Knowing that guy is that you're with, dang, he's cool and calm under fire. Okay. Even with your fire, even if there's a fire in the house, still got to be cool. Come on, y'all, let's get it going. Come on, everybody out the house.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that guy.
Sometimes that cool and calm comes from knowing that your partner trusts you.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes, is knowing that you have somebody that you can depend on, that trusts you and believes in you.
Mm.
So we have our parts, to play in that. But I'm like that. The more serious or severe the situation is, the more calm I am. But not everybody's that way. And so I think part of it is knowing, playing to your strengths. If you're not that way, then don't put yourself in a situation of being the decision maker when you know you're indecisive. But that's, I mean, of course, you want a decisive leader. You want a person who can handle themselves and their emotions. But sometimes it is a matter of, having your moment, and then, all right, I got that out. Now let's get about fixing this. Let's take care of this. So you kind of have to build that rapport with your partner of, this is the way that I function. I might have a moment, and for me, when I have people around that have to have a moment, I'm usually like, okay, take your moment over there. Because I need to figure out what to do. Now, if I had a partner, it would be different, but usually, because I'm single, it's like, how everybody's trying to, tell you how crazy and urgent it is. And you're like, I know it is. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I don't need to be panicking right now.
Right.
So,
Hey, Tashawn,
My question is to the women, you want an emotional man.
Hey, Tashawn, you've got LA and D with their hands up.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I'll be quiet now.
No, we're gonna answer your question. LA might have an answer to your question too. But I think it depends on what is meant by emotional. Out of control, no. But LA, come on.
Okay, hi everyone. This is my first with the group, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about these topics. And thanks for your presentation and the tips and the links you gave us. I don't know if as far as my answer to his question, I would want that. It's important to me that the man is vulnerable because as women, we're mostly vulnerable. So it's good to have that reciprocated to know that, not only can you be the man, but also show some softness, some of those female qualities also, so that, we mesh better. That's for me, but I know I see a lot of, and I do watch reality TV. I see some of these crazy women and all the stuff they give. And I'm thinking, that's the extreme. When I see all of that, I'm like, I would never do that. I would never talk to anyone like that. But it's out there. And maybe because that's so publicized, you expect that of every woman. That's the only thing I had to add for that, because that's what it looks like. I know that's not me. And I know that's not a lot of women that I know, but it's all over the media.
True. Okay. You have something else you want to share?
The thing I have, because I about triggers, and I've done work for a while, so I pretty much know my triggers. I know what they are. And what triggered me was when somebody brought up something about trust, because and he mentioned that he had to do some work on that because somebody said he had trust issues. I had this feedback, but I guess I'm not sure how to say this, but I don't feel that I can trust people off the bat on everything. I think it's something that has to be earned. That's something you have to develop. And I don't like when somebody says, "What? You don't trust me?" You meet somebody and they expect you to trust everything they do and say. I'm not doing that. So, oh, you got trust issues. So it's seen as a negative when it's a measure of safety for me, given my life experience. They're going to take everything that you've learned over your years into your relationship. And for safety, I'm not going to trust you until I see that your words match with your actions. And if there's a disconnect there, I just don't blatantly give that away.
Mm-hmm.
That was scary. I'm like, well, does that mean I have to do more work so that I can trust everybody off the bat? Because I don't know if I can do that. I'm not built like that.
No, that was Sean W. that had mentioned that, and no, it's not so one, people will definitely use what they can against you. So that's why I said, several times in presentation, your feelings are not right or wrong. So don't judge, and definitely don't let someone else tell you that your feelings are right or wrong. That's a red flag, because you have the right to your feelings. But trusting someone sight unseen, I mean, we give everyone a certain amount of trust automatically, because we are in their space, they're in our space to whatever degree. We're expecting them to not do certain things. We don't think about it because it's automatic. We don't expect people to, suddenly stab us. We're
Mm-hmm.
expecting somebody to curse us out. We're not, there's certain things that you trust that they're going to conduct themselves in a socially acceptable manner. But the type of trust you're talking about is, as Joseph said in the chat, it's earned. And so you develop a level of comfort over time and experiences with a person to say, okay, I'm fine with this, I'm fine with that, type of a thing. So that there's no need for you to feel some type of pressure. Or, I mean, what you said reminds me of people when you're not willing to give them things. They're like, oh, I thought you're supposed to be a Christian. Well,
Yeah. Oh, they love
yeah, I don't owe you these things that are going to be harmful to me. So excuse me. So it's more so when you have gone through experience and time with the person, and yet you still the needle hasn't moved, and like they've done things that show you from their actions that they will do, and yet you still don't trust. That's when you have to kind of look at, okay, are my walls too strong? Do I have trust issues because I don't trust them to be a support to me, but they've been so supportive. You can't see the basis for why you are still keeping your distance or feeling the need to protect yourself when they haven't given you cause to, but yet have given you cause to feel comfortable and able to trust in those types of things. So
No, I hear you. And you just mentioned another one I think I've heard a lot. I call it the Christian trigger, where they're like, oh, I thought you were a Christian, or why are you behaving in such a way? And those are the ones where I've got the most heartbreak, because then you start to feel like, oh, am I not? To second guess myself and think, I guess
yeah,
to be more like Jesus. And and
right. So
you don't trust
that's
gut feelings.
yeah, and that goes back to recognizing your feelings and not internalize the feelings of other people. You can acknowledge other people's feelings, be mindful of their feelings, but that doesn't mean that you have to accept their version of reality as truth. Though because they
I,
see it that way does not mean that you now have to see it that way.
I love that.
Yeah, it's one thing that and I don't know if Dee, if you're able to talk, but I know you had your hand up, so I'm going to go to you next. If you're there, we want to show the love and compassion that we want shown to us, and sometimes that causes us to try to see things in the other, through the other person's eyes, to the degree that we're accepting things that we know are not in fact true or not healthy for us, etc. When one important part of starting to connect with how you feel and what you're thinking is to get a very firm understanding of what you think and how you feel and who you are. And so when you're then interacting with other people and taking in, their feedback, their emotions, all of those things, you have a solid sense of self. So when that feedback, that information doesn't line up, you can say, okay, thank you for your feedback. And you leave it as feedback and not internalize it and start to question yourself. Now, if you're hearing something repeatedly, then you have to re-examine and say, okay, that wasn't my intention, but somehow that's how it's coming off. I'm showing up in the world this way. What am I doing? But that doesn't make it true that someone is, projecting onto you this thought, this feeling, this action. And you can say that, I'm sorry you feel that way. That was not my intention, but don't allow someone else to tell you how you feel or what you intended or what you think. They can tell you how they're receiving it, but they can't tell you that. They can't tell you. And you can tell them that. And I'll tell a person in a minute, these are things that I choose not to make my problem. That's your problem. And I'm not saying to be mean, but I'm saying that, again, back to the scripture, guard your heart. Because while it's fine to be empathetic and loving and compassionate, not to the point of sacrificing your own self or sense of self. Dee, did you still want to share? I know you had your hand up before.
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. First of all, I'm new to the group. And first of all, I'm interested in your book. If you could, I guess, put in the chat or something, how we could get your book or the name of your book. But my question, and going back to the idea of trust issues. And yes, I did have trust issues, and I may still have them. But the last 3 years, I've kind of been by myself with this COVID effect. And thinking that I had worked through issues on my own and saying that this year I was going to get out and be around people, I'm believing that maybe I haven't worked out what I thought I had worked out with trust issues. But my thought was dealing with that over the last 3 years. God gives everyone free will, and I have to be considerate that they're acting out on their free will. And it's on me to pray about discernment and ask for that gift so I can tell where people are coming from and why they are coming at me, and for me not to react and be emotional to that. And this is my second viewing. The first one I was saying, I didn't know about this because this stuff seems too intellectual. Is all that necessary? And this topic today is a reply to an answer for me for something that happened this week, 2 days ago, from the situation 3 years ago that I thought I had handled. And evidently all I did was took flight to it. And the person is deceased now. So I didn't get closure. And I saw a picture just the other day, and all that stuff just came up. And I'm wondering, why in the world is this happening? But it's because I took flight. I never resolved the issue. And what is this? A new year, a new year, a new you. I guess God is telling me, yeah, you're gonna handle it this year and get it up for sure. So I am in appreciation of this talk today and the last one that I saw, because we are emotional beings, and you need your intellect, but it can't just be worldly. You've got to let the Holy Spirit lead and guide you through stuff. So I appreciate this. And not this stuff is not too deep, not too intellectual. If you haven't got your emotions in check, maybe you need to stay over on that side for a little bit longer until the Holy Spirit to God has done, has completed and finished the work in you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Oh,
Dee.
I don't want your book, reference to your book.
Oh, I put the link in the chat. Thank you, Dee, for sharing. And yeah, we often think because we don't, we don't learn it in school, we don't talk about it, and so it's like, well, we don't take all that. But then we find ourselves stumbling in different situations in life. And so like anything, we're in this journey together. We all trying to find that person and to serve God in the best way possible. And so whatever I feel that God is to saying or bringing to the group, I'm going to do my best to share it. So I appreciate that. Sean W.
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Again, to Sean, you are right on point. But I want to address, Calvin was talking about men's emotions and stuff. There was a book a long time ago called Men Cry in the Dark. And the thing is that we are taught to suppress our emotions. We are taught to man up. But when you look at the consequences of that, like right now, men have the highest suicide rate in the country, and it's because we cannot express our emotions. We haven't learned how to deal with our emotions. And we really need to learn how to deal with our emotions. It's okay to have emotions. Like you said, feelings are neither good or bad, it's what you do with them. Being able to be vulnerable in the presence of a woman that you love, we have to be able to do that. You want to see a grown man vulnerable? Let his mother pass away. Then you're going to see some real emotion. Then you're going to see somebody that needs to be hugged. Then you're going to need somebody. Doesn't mean that they're weak. The reason why they're having that emotion is because they are strong. So being able to express that and not keep that stuff bottled up, because it will explode like a volcano. And then the person that it explodes on is going to be like, I just did this very little thing. Why are you blowing up? It's because we're piling all of this stuff on top of each other until it's like boom, and the person doesn't know where is that outrage coming from. So we as men, especially Black men, we have got to learn how to express how we feel in a productive way. It's the response to our emotions that makes that determines whether it's good or bad, not the emotion itself. I've learned how to express my emotions. You get me angry, I'm going to tell you, yo, you just made me angry. Like I'm going to tell you, I am not holding that stuff in. I am not taking it home with me. I am going to let you know you hurt my feelings, and what you said hurt my feelings. Bottom line, if I'm on a date and she says something that's wrong, I am going to let her know. No big deal. It doesn't make me weak. I'm just not carrying that stuff around to later on have it blow up. But I need to be real. I need to be real with who I'm with. I need to be real with the people that I love. I need to be real. What I was saying about trust issues goes to relationships. I'm not talking about somebody that you're building a relationship with, somebody that you care about, somebody that you have said has done nothing to make you distrust them. So would you trust them with the things that are most important to you? Would you trust them with all the money that you have? Would you trust them with your very life? When I start to look at those things, I've realized that, what? I've got some deeper issues when it comes to trust that I need to learn I need to just give it to God. Because if I trust in the Lord, then I shouldn't have a problem trusting people, because it doesn't matter what they do to me. God has got me in the end. So that's, to Sean, this presentation is real deep. I mean, it can be surfacey, but it can get as deep as you want it to go with who you are, what God created you to be, and your relationships with other people. And it all goes back to our feelings and how we respond to the people that we love and that we care about. But that, I can go on. So I'm going to shut up now. But thanks again to Sean.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you. And so Calvin, you didn't ask for a man's feedback, but Sean gave you some. Tracy.
Say again?
No, I just said you had asked for women to comment, but I said Sean gave you some feedback too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been avoiding, trying not to go too deep. Of course, there are levels to what I was saying now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I like the title of that book because I am one that will cry in the dark. Okay, and not let anyone see it. It's kind of like how I'm built now. It's like you said, when mom, dad, sis, brother passed away. Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I mean, to the point where, I'll go someplace else and cry. Okay, if I have to go in the closet, can't let nobody see me cry. So that is part of the upbringing. But there's layers to it. I won't go too deep with that. There's a balance there, of course. I ain't saying just shut down. Of course not.
Thanks.
And then I'll stop hogging the mic now.
No problem. We enjoy you sharing. Tracy.
Hi, yes. This is my first meeting with you guys, and I just want to let you know that I did enjoy your presentation. I feel like it was very beneficial, and it was really relative to the time of my life right now, as I am in the process of trying to renew my mind and renew my thinking, which is, I think, a continuous thing throughout our life. But I think at this moment in my life, I'm more aware and conscious of my thoughts and my thinking, trying to change it. Understanding like how my thoughts can affect a current situation, because I reach out to my past and dwell on negative things. So trying to not allow my experiences of my past to affect my present situation or person, whatever it may be. So I just want to say thank you. It was very beneficial and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tracy. Welcome to the group. We hope to see you more in the future.
All right, thank you.
Natalie.
Hey guys. So great presentation and good, afterthought conversations. Trust is a really I just love the conversation of trust because I feel like everyone perceives it differently. But I would like to express that I think what should happen more often than it does is that we study the person's character before we even start trusting them, because people show consistency, whether it's a good way, whether it's something that shows in a good pattern or something that is not so favorable to that person. And I think what happens too is that we need to do a better job of not painting someone in a different picture than what they're showing, because I find that we start to say, oh, I trust him, but he's shown patterns or she has shown patterns that you don't like. So why would you trust someone that continuously shows patterns that is unfavorable or unpleasant, to be around? So I think we should start looking at each other's character, because if you had gotten a man that cheated on someone else and you just decided, oh, let me go be with him, you can't trust all the way that he is going to not do the same thing to you. So I think again, we need to look at each other's characters and not change or not paint a different perspective or picture of the person than they have actually shown. We need to definitely pair up a person's character and trust and kind of put them in the same category or the same boat before we can instill trust or build trust with someone. Like you can, if I tell you, like everyone that knows me that knows that if I say I'm going to be late, you can trust Natalie is lying because on time. If I say I'm going to be on time, you can trust that she's not lying, and because I'm always late. So if I tell you I'm going to be on time, you're going to be like, no, I know Natalie's character. She's never on time. So you have to trust that you know the person to the extent that even if, they say something that doesn't fall in line of who they actually are. And then another point that I want to make is the fact that you should be okay with it. So if someone shows you their character and you can, they've shown consistency in terms of that character that is probably not flavorable. Like for instance, I know I am always late. It doesn't matter. But if you're my friend, you need to be okay with that. That's my character. You need to accept that. Because if you don't accept it, you're going to end up getting mad at me when you already know that's my character. And I can't help but you being mad. Like I have nothing to do with that. If you choose to mess with me as a friend, knowing that I'm always late, don't be mad at me when I'm my true character and my true nature. Don't try to change me, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, Natalie, thanks for sharing that. We talked a little bit about that before, but you can't pick the parts of a person that you, especially if you love someone, whether the parts that you don't like are part of them. And if you love someone, it's a package deal. Some of it is not going to be your favorite. That's just how it is. How easy would it be to love thy neighbor if we only had to love the good parts? It's a whole package. And just like God created day, he created night. So there's two sides. There's a wholeness that comes with the parts that we like and the parts we don't like. Doesn't mean that you don't, as Sean W. said, you don't have to say, hey. But if you know that this is a part of who a person is, you can't expect them to change who they are. Behavior is different than what actually is a pillar of their personality or who they are as a person. So you just have to be mindful of what it is that you're having an issue with and whether or not you can be okay with that. And if you can't, it's not them, it's you. It's like, all right, I can't deal with this. We can be on this level or not, or maybe not at all. You have to, make that decision. Brian.
Thank you. It's my first time on the Zoom call, and a great topic. I have to go back and listen to it because I was driving and I could not hear everything. But I really enjoyed everybody's comments. It's great to be in the company of men and women who are mature. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, I spent many years, decades working in the media, and I think somebody mentioned reality TV. I can't stand the image that they have of us in the media, especially Black folks. We're buffoons, especially the women, the loud talking women and all that kind of stuff. But that's not why I'm commenting. I just had to get that out. It really bothers me, the image that we have. But I think some of the brothers were talking about men with their emotions and holding emotions in, letting emotions out. And I was one of those guys that held my emotions in, trying to be the stiff upper lip kind of a guy like my dad, who was from Jamaica. But when dad would get mad, get the heck out the way, And I grew up with that. So when I got married, I thought, well, that's basically what you got to do. So I, held things in, and then one day, my 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 then wife just began to poke at me because we were going through the trials and tribulations of a first time marriage, no money, still trying to figure out life, and it turned into a bad situation. I didn't hurt her, but the memory of that hurts me now, and it's been a long time ago. See, so holding emotions for men is catastrophic. It's not something men should do. Now, I know everybody has different opinions on it, but in my walk, when I hold emotions in, it's not a good situation. So what I'm learning, and I'm still walking this out, is when I get to a certain point, okay, I'm going to have to check this person. I'm going to have to say exactly how I'm feeling, because I refuse, with the Lord's help, to allow myself to get to the point where I will explode, because that's when I'm totally out of control. And that's not a good look. It's an awful look. That's why so many men, we're committing suicide. We're doing stupid things. We're beating up our partners. We're screaming at the kids. We're doing all kinds of negative things, perpetuating the myth in society that we're, just a bunch of lunatics, fill in the blank, because we're holding in all of the pain that we're dealing with. And, I think Black men deal with a lot of societal pain that we cover up so well because we've been walking in it for so long. I've been in situations where I was the only Black, when I was being basically tormented on my way up the ladder. And I would call my then wife and just not explode at her, but I would explode over the situation because I was holding in so much. So that being said, I'm much, much, much better now, much better. But I have to constantly be on guard. Okay, are you holding, when I'm walking in various situations, various lanes in life, if I see something on the horizon, I'm going to do what I can to mitigate it before it gets to the point where I'll even think about exploding. Because, we're under a lot of pressure right now. Black men are under a ton of pressure. And I think, like I said earlier, I think we do a decent job of, of dealing with it. But we, and you've seen it, we have times when we just lose it. We drop the ball. And a lot of times it's because we just don't have that person or group of people around them to give them the words of advice that they need. And let me just say this real quick. I probably wouldn't be divorced now if I had a small circle of men to talk me off the ledge late in my marriage when it was really devolving. I didn't have that group. There were good men around me, but I was not vulnerable enough, and I did not trust anybody enough with the issues I was dealing with. So, I know ladies want strong men and all that kind of stuff, but there's going to be a time when that man is going to need you to really rub his head, talk him off. We as men carry a lot of pain. We carry a lot of emotions that we have no place to dump. And the only place that we have to go is to that significant other who cares for us. And let me say one more thing. I know I'm like a preacher here, is my second closing, but the worst thing, at least in my book, at least with me, The worst thing you can do to a man is for him to be vulnerable with you, and then you turn around as a woman, as his partner, and use it against him. That will shut a door in that man's mind you will never be able to open. And I've experienced that. And I'm just glad that I can look back now and I'm very thankful that I've come to this point in my life, because I'm at peace. I have a certain level of peace that passes all understanding. And I'm just glad that I'm here. Okay. And I'm just, I'm ecstatic. That's why I'm being very honest with myself nowadays. I used to lie to myself. Oh yeah. Hey, she's cool. Go ahead and, hang out with her. No, if she's not interested in me, and she's not, if she's not showing the interest that she should, the level of interest, I'm going to keep it pushing, and I'm also going to, look at myself and figure out, okay, is this what you really want? You have to be honest with yourself. So, okay, I'm talking too long, but I just wanted to get that out there in the atmosphere, and share my points, because I very seldom have had a forum that I could say things like this, and people will understand.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for sharing. I think that we have probably likely known, if we ourselves haven't experienced, we know that experience. And that's, like I said earlier, why I had told my late husband when we were, early in our marriage, I need you to tell me what's going on. And I mean, we got to a point, where he would cry and all of those different types of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that just as men are taught to suppress their emotions, walk it off, to take it out in meaningless sex with people, different things that they're told to do that are not healthy. Women are taught to treat men that way, whether it be directly being told or by example, we're taught. So I knew better because I had so many men in my life. I had a lot of uncles, I had my dad, my brothers. And so sometimes as women, it's our baby brothers that make us see men as people, because, you want to protect, and, you see them differently than the world necessarily tells you to see them. But we have to show love to one another by teaching each other that those things are wrong, that, what the world said or what you were taught isn't the way. I do have feelings. I do need compassion. I do cry in the dark. I do have, and of course, when when you have the trust and when you feel safe. But even if it's not necessarily in a romantic situation, but to your sister, to another woman, that, okay, we're friends, but let me help you out. Let me peel back the curtain and let you know that this is what goes on with men. And so that they can learn that, oh, okay, I didn't realize, because how else are they going to know unless y'all tell us, and therefore that's just a friendship. But what kind of difference is it going to make in her next romantic relationship, that now she knows, okay, I need to navigate this differently, or now I realize that that's why he reacted that way when that situation came up. But it's the information, it's the insight that's needed. And we, owe the same to you all to say, hey, here's a better way, or here's something that you might need to know that'll help you. I thinking back to what you were saying earlier, Calvin, I have a lot of I had a lot more male friends in my younger adult years. And now I have women friends too. So I won't say I have more male friends now, but that's one of the roles that I played, was like when my friends got divorced, they didn't have that wife to go home and, you know, have that place or whatever. And they would hang out with the guys, and the guys like, oh yeah, you know, you just get over her by getting under another one and all of this other stuff. They came to me to cry and to say, I miss her. You know, I don't want to go home and nobody's at home. And so just because you're not in a romantic relationship doesn't mean you can't be that safe place for a person, or show love. But for those that don't necessarily know, don't just write them off and say, hey, you know, that's just how men are, this is how women are. Show them better, teach them better. We're all trying to learn and grow and be better so that our next relationship is stronger and lasts longer. And so if you got some keys, unlock some doors, you know, let a sister know. You know, let a brother know what's going on, you know, share the information, because sometimes you alone speaking up, and thank you so much, Brian, are the key to helping a person to have a better understanding and make more informed decisions about how they conduct themselves in their next relationship. Natalie?
Yes, I too want to appreciate Brian for being transparent about his past, and, you know, giving us a perspective on like how guys would like to be received when they are trying to express themselves. So I want to like express a story that happened to me, a true story, and I kind of want to like shed some light on how even trusting people, I think also those same people need grace, like when you start to trust people, because in a sense where sometimes we want to be vulnerable and we end up expressing ourselves or telling someone something intimate or deep that has happened to us in our lives, but they don't receive it well, or we don't receive them well for them like finally getting like go walking through that door where we're like trying to trust them. So I feel like it's important to also extend grace to that person, only because there was a situation where I was dating someone and I realized after maybe a couple of months that we usually just really had surface level conversation and we never really got deep into it, even when we started talking about conversations that could get deep. So I had expressed that to him. And like maybe 10 minutes later, he was telling me a story about like, and I was like to him, you know, I feel like when we try to get deep, like you retract and like you know, shut the conversation down and it's like you go ghost or something. So he's like, okay, well, I didn't realize I was doing that. Da, 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 da. So then maybe like 20 minutes later, we start to have another conversation and he brings up the fact that, because he's always had issues with his mom, and issues of abandonment. And so I said to him, well, he said to me, like, so I have this issue with my mom. And, you know, she did something to me the other day and I just couldn't take it. And like, I had to block her. And I was like, that's exactly what you do to me. And then he's like, oh, you see, when I try to be, you know, when I try to be vulnerable with you, you're going to throw things in my face. And I felt so bad. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, he's right. I just did that and I used it against him. So I'm saying that because I could understand like where Brian was coming from, because I literally just did that to someone and it didn't occur to me. And then I thought about it and I processed it. And I was like, why did you do that? And I was like, usually you are an empathetic person. Yeah, you probably open your mouth too many times, you know, in the past when you should have shut it up. But like, you know, I mean, at the same time, it's just like, the conversation threw me off because one, that was the first time, you know, he'd open used to it. I wasn't, his cadence in doing it and his method of doing it was, was unusual to me or strange to me. So I felt like, so from that point on, that one instance, we just stopped talking. He didn't respond to me when I sent him messages. It was like he went ghost on me like forever this time. So I took that as a lesson, because I was just like, yeah, you should be like, I should understand or become more sensitive towards people that I tend to realize that they don't go surface level. So kind of just being aware of like who I'm dealing with more would help like in the future. But I was just saying that too, like when you start to trust someone and they don't react or respond the way that you expected them to or wanted them to, if you really find that this person, you might have still a significant relationship with them, I think it's important to just extend grace, because at the end of the day, you both guys are starting to trying to get to know each other. So this is like where, signals may get crossed, and the person is trying to learn you. So just like when you were in school and you were learning a new topic for the first time, you're not going to get 100 on every single, well, unless you're that person, but like, you understand what I mean. I hope it translates well to everyone.
Yeah. It takes practice. And I appreciate you sharing that, Natalie. There's gonna be times where someone is saying something to us, and based on our experience with them, we're like, we have a whole other conversation going on in our head of what we could say. We're like, I'm not gonna say that though, because this is not the time. But so you have to choose your moments, and there's going to be opportunities to say, I don't like what you did, and then there's times where you just have to say, okay, you just have to be that listening ear, and that empathetic spirit for the moment to say, I'm a friend. I'm here to listen, and to help you through, whatever the difficult moment or time is. So it can be challenging though when they're like doing like, yeah, you do that. That's what you do, and nobody likes it. They're like, okay, I'm going to be sensitive right now. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share?
I wanted to commend Natalie for that acknowledgement. And I think, what her response is normal, where we are on the phone with somebody and we do invest a level of emotion with whomever we've gotten on the phone with, whether it's work or, personal. But what has helped me is to say, do you want me to put on my listening ears for no opinion, or my listening ears for an opinion or insight? So then I stop and listen for their truth, and they don't want my feedback. Like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I just need to get it out, and don't judge me later. Or it's like, no, I really, really need some help through this. Can you help me navigate? Am I overthinking this, or am I too emotional in this? So what has helped is, to say, hey, do you want me just to listen? Like, I'm just really here as your sounding board, or do you really need some input? So and I think if we give people grace with that, then we don't take all of the conversation like it's about me, because it's often not. It's really the person just needing a safe space to say their truth at that moment. And now don't weaponize it, allow that. But ask the question, you need me just to listen, or do you really want some feedback? And that helps both of you get to a deeper level of a conversation, because you are being genuine in what your purpose is, to either help or hinder. It's either or.
Very
That's
true.
opinion.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, that helper hinder is really important, because I think sometimes we feel like we don't recognize the energy that comes from or is put into relationships with people. We think sometimes, oh, it's just something to do, even like dating, like, oh, we're just, it's just a good time. Everything takes energy, and it either adds to or takes away from. And so you have to be mindful of where you're investing your very valuable time. Is it benefiting you in the long term, or is it just seemingly a small sacrifice of time or energy or effort that over time accumulates, just like accruing interest? Anybody else have anything to share? Thank you, Lori. Thanks, Lori. Lori gotta go get that hair done. Thanks, Daria. Well, we're actually at 1:30. We didn't close out at the 1 o'clock like we normally do. But it looks like everybody is leaving. So we'll go ahead and pray out and let you guys enjoy. Thanks, Shane. And Courtney, let you guys enjoy your Saturday. The sun is out here in Atlanta. I don't know about where everybody else is, but we haven't seen the sun in a bit. So this is a treat. All right. Lord God, thank you again for giving us the opportunity to come together to be a family of believers working towards your good and perfect will, Lord God. We pray that you continue to guide and lead us in what you would have us to say, what you would have us to do, the choices you would have us to make that keep us on the path that you would have us on to fulfill the purpose that you've placed in our lives, Lord God. We thank you for our purpose. We thank you for your will. We thank you for this community. We thank you for this fellowship. And I pray, Lord God, that all that you have for us to get out of it, that we take away, that you allow it to bear fruit in our lives, Lord God, that we may be blessings, that we may be vessels in the lives of others. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right. Let me see. Let me stop the recording. I just want to make sure. Oh, stop it, Joseph. So I want to make sure no one else has anything to add before we totally drop off, since we still have a few people. Lakeisha's been quiet today. She must be doing something else.
No, I'm not. I'm just tired, but there was a great presentation and I just enjoyed listening to everyone.
Thank you, Keisha.
I know I have a lot to work on. But the one part before I do got to drop, but the one part that really was, that really spoke to me, Tashawn, was you saying about us teaching people how to treat us. And sometimes I find that I just feel like they should just know, like, common sense, but it's not always common sense. It's not always common. So if I'm not teaching them properly how to treat me, then maybe I have no grounds to get angry and upset sometimes when they're not doing things. So I do have to own my, I guess I have to own my part of it sometimes, especially when I notice that it's repeated, right? At some point, I have to stop it. I have to address it. Now, if I've addressed it and they keep doing it, okay, that's on them. But if I have not addressed it, and I've noticed that, especially especially with my family. Now I can address things with other people, but I have a problem with my family putting my foot down and actually keeping it down. Yeah. I might put a toe down. I need to put a whole foot some days. So I do. So that part really, really spoke to me. When you were saying that aspect, I was like, oh yeah. So some of my frustration is because I have not enforced it, or I have not really. Yeah, I've allowed it. Let's put it like that. So appreciate it. Awesome topic.